5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is Deducter bringing you set 5 of STX Soul vs SK Telecom 1. The series is evened up at 2-2. And today, or in this matchup, we have Last as the yellow Terran playing for SKT1, and we have Ssak as the red Terran at the 7 o'clock position playing for STX Soul, and Last is at the 1 o'clock position. Neither one of these Terran players appear to be very good. Last only has a 44% win rate, and it looks like Ssak only has a 38% win rate overall. So neither player particularly good. Oh, I got the teams wrong. It looks like Ssak is on SK Telecom 1 and Last is on STX Soul. So on the map Beltway here. Nevertheless, here's hoping that these two pro gamers deliver an entertaining game. So no players going for any sort of crazy rush at this point. Both players just putting down their first supply depot. And I just felt it was a bit disappointing last game to see Classic go for an interesting rush, one that definitely can work, and looks like here we have Last just sending out his SEV to scout a bit. He's gonna put down a forward racks. This is not any sort of proxy racks. This is just so that he can float his barracks out a bit more. I'm not quite sure why he put it on top of that ramp though, in that little cliff area. That would make his Marines take longer to move around if he wanted to send the Marines over to Ssak's base there. But I guess the advantage is that, you know, the opposing player would never scout up that ramp in any sort of normal scouting pattern. It looks like 14CZ here coming from Ssak. He's going to take the early economic advantage. Good for him. Again, 14CZ not too risky in TDT, the only matchup where that is mostly true. Fortunately, at least for Last, he's going to be able to scout this out early. So that's good for him with his barracks, and he's sending his SAV in the wrong direction, it looks like. Not quite sure whether Last is going... No, so if he's mining gas, he's going to put down a factory and then probably get his expansion. He's not going to put down the expansion immediately afterwards. And the factory looks like it just started up there for Last. So Last is going to scout Ssak second. He's going to see the fast expansion, and we will see how he decides to deal with this. Aggressive attack, or he's going to try to bunker aim and hope to beat Ssak by being a better player at the chess type playing that these programmers are so good for. It looks like Ssak is also going to find Last and try to gain a positional advantage for a longer game here. Ssak doesn't seem like he sent his SEV up these ramps. He's just scouting the natural for some reason. I think that is a bit of a mistake here. It's not like this is any sort of very intricate early scouting pattern where he absolutely has something like planned down to the second. At this point in the game, I feel you're better off knowing what your opponent is doing. You know, getting the SCV in the base just to scout around is always useful. Looks like Starport going down for Last. This is his response to seeing the fast expansion. So he's probably going to build Wraith, try to push out a bit, and then maybe do a combine. So contain in the front and drop in the back. Reasonably good strategy. Last also putting down his command center now. With Vulture, he's going to be able to knight this scout. And yeah, I just thought Ssak kind of set 2 starports, so that's surely going to be more of a Wraith focus. Now, I think Wraiths are great in the mid-late game to late game, or actually really in the late game. You know, you build a few Wraiths early on, 1 or 2 early on, that's good, and maybe 4 or 5 in the mid-game, that's also great. And it's only really in the very late game, after you get upgrades, that you can really, you know, abuse Raves and mass produce them. Looks like, interestingly enough, last landed his barracks up in this little cliff area is just going to distract Ssak a little bit here at his natural expansion. Clever little move by Last. If Sak's not careful, he might even lose an SCV or two. And now Last cleverly sneaking a Vulture by, and Ssak doesn't seem to have any units to deal with this. And he's in fact withdrawing all his SCVs from the natural. Where are his units? Surely he's got a tank building or out already, but no. He doesn't have a Vulture, he doesn't have a tank out, he has absolutely nothing to deal with his Vulture. And now Last is actually doing significant damage with 1 Vulture and 2 Marines, stopping all mining at natural. Now that's economy of force right there. Way disproportionate damage done by almost nothing. I'm not quite sure why Ssak is letting this happen here. Ssak also putting down his starport with a control tower. He's probably building a dropship, I would imagine, from there. Raves with Cloak are starting to come out here for Last. I think an early Wraith attack like this is probably not going to work. And that Siege Tank almost dying, in fact, from just 2 Marines up the ramp. Up on that cliff there. Exactly why it's almost always a bad idea to attack equal or slightly inferior army up a ramp with just range units. Almost always a disaster. So it looks like Last is going to have a Cloak now researching also for Ssak, and Last with 2 Raves out now. He's not going to be able to accomplish too much. It looks like he's camping the starport and going to pick off the first Wraith. He's moved his Raves out now to start picking away at some of these SCVs here. Ssak does have a scanner, so he's not going to be too bothered by this. Wonder if he has an engineering bay down. He does need that down and start putting out a turret or 2 to help him scout, because with 2 command centers, 2 scans, he should be fine mostly. It looks like 3 Raves coming out now. Armory also coming out for Ssak here. These Raves are starting to do actually quite a bit of damage to the SCV line and killing some of these Marines too. 1 Wraith coming out for Ssak, but that's going to do absolutely nothing. These Raves are actually doing significant damage here. And looks like a scan went down. That was Last's scan, picking off the Wraith from Ssak. Using 1 Wraith like that is not going to work here. And it looks like Last is in a dominant position now. He's driven all the SCVs out of the natural for Ssak. He's stopped the armory from building for several times, and surely he's got a few tanks prepared too. Engineering bay SCV also getting picked off, and yeah, 2 factories going up for Last. He's going to be able to move some tanks out, and really quite bad play this game overall coming from Ssak here. He had the early economic advantage, but he was unable to defend against a relatively basic Wraith harass like this. Sending his Raves out piecemeal to get killed, and now there's a critical number of Raves up for Last here, killing all the SCVs at the natural. Finally, it looks like Ssak is going to be able to ward this away with his own Wraith and a Goliath, but the damage has already been done, and now Last is firmly behind economically. All Last has to do is submit his advantage, sending a few tanks, and finish this off at this point. He's getting his armory too now. And Ssak, just poor defense overall. He didn't seem too concerned about the Raves, and I didn't think he would be too bothered by them as long as he put down the appropriate countermeasures, but he just didn't. And so now Last is in a dominant position, both economically and militarily. Last is probably going to try to at least put on a contain and possibly even go for the kill, moving his units out now to the natural expansion for Ssak. Ssak desperately putting down 2 factories, but these aren't going to help him in the short term. He's got 2 tanks and a Goliath. It should be sufficient to hold off these 3 tanks, but the big difference is tons of Raves for Last, coming in and destroying all of Sakk's Air Force, picking off a tank, and with those losses, I think there's no way that Ssak can hold off this attack. Much better use of his units this game coming from Last. His performance was not particularly impressive, but it was nevertheless good. I would say definitely good, not like amazing or anything, but certainly bad manner here coming from last, putting down command center. I think this is going a little overboard. You didn't actually winning that dominating manner. Is more like your opponent was not very good, rather than any particular skill of your own. But he put down the command center, humiliating poor Ssak here. So now we're good to go on to game 6.